very imperfect democratic world in Malaysia. It is a very imperfect democracy, one. And you start off, I mean for me as well, in the opposition, you start off without having a fair access to media, an uneven level playing field. So, can you imagine? That is the very premise you start with. You talk about our country, yes, you can, as a politician, as a political party, you can participate in elections, but there's no room for you to air your grievances or to compete with the prevailing propaganda brought upon by the government of the day. And it's very difficult. But I think this is where I differ with him. I still feel we've achieved so much. And when I think back, the challenges that the PSM leadership had faced, especially the tension under the EO, the challenges that 7 of our leaders, Keadilan's leaders in 2001 were detained under the ISA, and then sort of the start of our extension in politics, trying to gain some level of popularity, some ground among the electorates, and 7 of our leaders were arrested. And of course, this happens time and again, consistently across the board. Yes, it is very imperfect, and I think whatever may happen, the fact of the matter is, you have been able to change the narrative. Saya fikir satu perkara yang kita tak boleh nafikan, bahawa pandangan bagaimana kita mencorak keputusan kerajaan, walaupun tak seperti yang kita harapkan. SOSMA itu, atau Peaceful Assembly Bill itu merupakan bukti yang terbaru yang mengecewakan kita. Okay, kami lagi kecewa lah pasal kena tangkap ni kami yang dulu. I mean, we're going to be chosen first and foremost in the list, of course, you know, whether you're in PSM or whether in Pakatan Rakyat. I mean, you will be first and foremost in those lists of persons investigated or detained, whatever. So yes, I would say we have a huge stake in this. You can be cynical, you can view politicians critically, but at the end of the day, I feel that I believe in whatever we do, and it is very important to understand that we are facing the brunt of any flawed legislation. Jadi, kejayaan permulaan adalah bila Perdana Menteri yang belum lagi dipilih oleh rakyat, tapi dilantik kerana transisi kuasa. I'm talking about representative democracy here. Following Edmund's take, yeah, he has been appointed and transitioned from Pak Lah, and the declaration, the acceptance that a new era has begun in Malaysia, and the fact of the matter is the government no longer holds the most supreme view, and supposedly now supreme some love lah for democracy. Whatever the matter, yes, the outcome has not been favorable at all. But for me, we have affected the narrative. You know, I mean, that is something to be celebrated. So we always must understand, you work within the confines of the challenges, the legal impediments that are in place, the institutional challenges in Malaysia's democracy. You know, whatever you may say about our political party, even past, yeah, at the beginning with the Islamic State rhetoric, no longer now, but they have always time and again participated in elections, no matter how flawed, no matter how annoying, or how maddening. That has always been the root for the political parties, at least the majority political opposition political parties in Malaysia, and that is something very important. Now moving on, kerana tajuk kita pada malam ini adalah tentang emergency ordinance. Adakah dengan kebebasan, adakah dengan pemansuhan EO digantikan dengan SOSMA itu sudah ada era baru? Sudah tidak lagi kita mengingati kemungkinan dimangsakan, kemungkinan dizalimi oleh undang-undang sedia ada. And so I would argue, no. In fact, right now we would have to go through a very difficult period before you move on to legislate changes. Now, first, I would say, looking at the emergency ordinance. People always think, for those of you who have read Pakatan pledges, we promised institutional reform, we promised political reform. In fact, if the stupid parliament would work properly, my private member's bill, or any legislator's private member's bill, for example, the emergency revocation bill, would be debated. But it's not. All these small efforts, Dr. Jeyakumar, time and again, put amendments, either to improve existing challenges, but it does not see the light of day. Okay? And this, again, goes back to the issue of the failure of the parliament system. The parliament in the country, it has been a complete failure. And if we had a government that would be smarter in drafting bills, then it's another matter lah. But we don't. And therein lies the bigger problem. But it is important to hold the various parties accountable to their pledges. And that's why I say, don't take it lightly. Edmund brought up a very important issue when you talk about local council elections. You should remind Selangor, even Penang. I mean, it's important, yes. Right now, the buck is passed to Election Commission, whether the issue of expenditure or anything else. But the point of the matter is, it must come from you, from all of you, to remind them, these are your basic pledges, your basic promises. So with regards to political reform, for me, it's no issue. I mean, in order for us to survive and thrive, we must proceed with implementing these changes. So with the EO, which is something that we rarely see, are the two dimensions. The first, of course, often mentioned, the fact is an archaic piece of legislation, combined with other legislation. We talk about SOSMA now, of course, the Sedition Act. The Sedition Act, my intern wrote something that was quite funny, I wanted to mention to you earlier. One bit of a Sedition Act is under Section 3(1), those acts defined as having a seditious tendency are acts with a tendency to B. Excite the subjects of the ruler or the inhabitants of any territory governed by any government, etc., etc. But if you excite the subjects, so by inference, this is the words of my intern, Viagra is now illegal. It's a joke, and it's not funny. Anyway, so that's the basic dimension people touch on, the fact that it's archaic, and it allowed at one time supreme power to the director of operations, as chosen by the leader and the king at the time, shall act in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister, Director of Operations, and shall exercise and be responsible for the exercise of the executive authority of Malaysia. Now, even in the UK, in a martial rule situation, because you must look at the root cause. Where do we get these archaic laws? The UK, our colonizers. But even in the UK, the power of this Director of Operation is controlled and counterbalanced by at least a committee. Yeah, whether the COBRA in the UK, the President Chief of Staff in the US, etc. Okay, that's one bit. But the second bit, which I think is not mentioned enough, and this relates to political reform, when you want to remove the EO. When we came up with the emergency revocation bill, what do you replace it with? How do you ensure you manage issues of terrorism concerns? You remember, the often repeated example by the Malaysian government is the September 11 attacks were actually hatched in Malaysia as a transit point. They keep repeating this example, saying that yes, terrorism is a real threat in Malaysia. It happens. We have subversive elements. I don't know whether Ayakin really exists, but the point is we do have the subversive elements. And it is painted, the opposition is painted as being lax on security, as not being focused or tough on national security. And this is where I think one dimension we forget to mention, the weakness of the EO. It actually, deteriorates the standards within the police force. Because under Ordinance 5, Emergency Public Order and Prevention of Crime Ordinance, any police officer may, without warrant, arrest and detain pending inquiries any person in respect of whom he has reason to believe that there are grounds which would justify his detention under certain sections. Now, when the police, the PDRN, has such powers, they have no need to establish an efficient and effective police force. They use the same shortcuts to arrest people. The burden of proof is lowered. You don't have to work hard to find where he hid the bomb. You don't have to work hard to find out who are his accomplices. You don't have to, because you just can lock him up for years and years and years. So you must understand, after all these years, we are looking at the current status of the police force as a result of the various laws in our country, which makes it so easy, just that easy, to detain anyone. Alright. Corruption on the part of the police force, etc. And it is very sad, because when you look at alternatives, and I mentioned this, I said, yes, I am worried about the state of national security. Can the government then provide? Can you imagine? You just read about this, but you are actually believing the police force. You don't even know. There's no accountable, independent body that actually can verify the allegations. Because, of course, security threats have to be handled carefully, properly. But you need an independent body to authorize, to verify these allegations. One, tell us, what are the top 3 threats in Malaysia today? Tell us. You tell us the top 3, then we can come up with suitable solutions. It's that easy. But even in Parliament, we cannot get access to the top 3 challenges facing Malaysian shores. Okay? And I'm pretty sure it's not the Malaysian obedient vice club. Yeah, so again, it's so skewed. And this relates also to how much the media has been used to serve the needs and interests of a particular party. So, from this dimension, then you start off thinking. Because when we talk about changing the current system, changing the way things work, you abolish the EO. Did we, in any point in time, I remember correctly, we never said, you must release those hardcore criminals now. You must make sure they rampage the cities of Kuala Lumpur. It was clear-cut. These people, especially talk about drug lords, criminals, hardcore criminals, whatever, under the EO, find sufficient evidence, charge them in open court. Yang tahanan ISA itu memanglah bebas, because most of them are detained due to political motivations. But if you have, again, any proof, charge them in court. What do? They first must release the 1,400 hardcore criminals, and then they decide to allow the ISA detainees to languish in prison while the Minister of Home Affairs eats his lamb chops. No, this is very important, because I must tell you, you must understand. One bit is accountability, but the second bit is we do have options. I don't want people to think, because right now, here, all of us, you understand about human rights, you know about political civil liberties. But people, mainstream Malaysians, I speak to them. I know they say, we need the ISA lah. Yeah, you all are go lah, ask abolish EO. Now I have this hardcore criminal, rampaging my homes. Where is it written? Malay Mail. Not by just anyone. It is by a renowned editor. So, these are problems affecting the society, and I do wish that all these issues are objectively tackled. You talk about, fine, I am as equally concerned about terrorists as the next cabinet minister. No, the Prime Minister, if he has any concerns, I'm not sure about that. But yes, we are. But we must do this properly. We must have a proper system that is effective. What did the UK do with the special branch outfit? They abolished it. They have a much leaner counter-terrorism unit. So you know that there's always going to be excesses when you give so much powers. Yeah? So you have a leaner counter-terrorism unit that can be monitored and also addresses, mitigates against guerrilla warfare tactics by certain extremist groups. Kita tak ada. You know, dekat UK, Pesuruhjaya Polis dipilih dalam pilihan raya. Because they know with that power, you know, a police commissioner, it is very, very something that is very powerful. It gives you status, it gives you autonomous powers, etc. So of course, there you must put in a system of check and balance. So my point here tonight is, we must start this engagement process. We must start writing. You know, all of you, you must tell them there is a way out. You know, I for the longest time, I think, you know, we've been tarnished with the sense that, you know, you guys tak kisah negara huru-hara, nak bebaskan satu dunia, tak kisah pasal kehidupan selamat. But the fact that we have had EO for so long, it has resulted in an inefficient police force. It has resulted in a government that's too quick to imprison and detain its rakyat without due process. It resulted in us being lied to time and again, and that is why we demand for greater transparency, and that is why I tell you everything's interrelated to the point that if you have free and fair media, you will know about such things. I mean, can you imagine how sad we should be? I know lah Radio Bangsa covering us, but we also want TV3, because TV3, mind you, cannot be replaced by the new internet. Why? Because the millions watch it. Pakcik-makcik kat Felda tu. You know? So, imagine my great, you know, disappointment, you know, frustration, having to travel hours, jumpa 50 orang makcik kat Felda. You know, it is not easy. It is very challenging. But I tell you, that is why we have to demand an end to this monopoly. And again, the private members bill for the revocation of printing presses and publications bill dah submit, tapi macam mana? Tak dipanggil lah kan, tak boleh dapat. But the point is, it is there. You know, it is there. It does not take a genius. You know, you have lawyers everywhere. Cranky lawyers like Edmund, you know, more optimistic lawyers like Andrew Koo. So there's many lawyers that are more than willing. In this case, I have the high respect for Lawyer Bureau and the Bar Council, because they really provide us with the legal framework, with the you know, the things that are needed to change the way things are. So, like I said, please help us now. First, you must understand the issue. Do not, when you campaign to people, do not just say, you know, demi keadilan, demi rakyat, kita kena bebaskan semua orang. Please tell them, EO detainees, of course, rehabilitative mode, you know, sebelum bebas tu pastikan, cari masa. I mean, we are pragmatic persons, you know. I think that is the bit that we have to continue, because like it or not, we are suffering the tyranny of the majority. If the apathetic mainstream Malaysian doesn't care two hoots about the EO, in fact now they're blaming us for the abolishment of the EO, you have to be mindful. Goes back to Amartya Sen's theory of justice. Convince them you are right. You know, it's not easy to just say you're right, because I know I'm brilliant, more brilliant than everyone else. Of course, you know, or a PSM, you know. But the thing is, you must convince them, argue. And I'm sure, and I still remain optimistic, because for me, 14 years, since 98 dulu, siapa yang sokong kami pun Melayu je. Normally, they not support us then. But guess what? Over time, you know, always never give up hope. Never think for a moment you cannot change people's mindsets. If in Malaysia, with the severe control over the media, PN still lost 2/3 in 08. Imagine what you can do if you continue, if you understand the issues, and if you are committed to reform. Because at the end of the day, this is our country. You want reform? Make it happen. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Nurul.